Welcome to the Genealogy Gems podcast. It's a show filled with family history, research, strategies and techniques, news and entertainment, and inspiration. And I'm your host, Louise Cooke. Hello and welcome to Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 191. I am just back from the National Genealogical Society Conference. It was held in sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Kind of a nice place to hold a conference. And I got a chance to meet a lot of our current listeners out there and talk to you, and also converted lots of people to tune into the Genealogy Gems podcast. So the more the merrier. So a big hello to everyone who is listening for the first time. And of course, to all of you who make time each month to visit with me here. I appreciate it. Today's show reflects some of the fantastic conversations that I've had at recent conferences. You're going to hear from one of my booth buddies in the exhibit hall, Jim Beidler. He was at both the Ohio Genealogical Society Conference and the NGS conferences. He was there with his new book on German records online, so we'll be talking to Jim. And I'm also going to share my conversation with genealogist Amy Crow on her favorite apps for learning local history. And a young family historian writes in with his Google research success story. I can't wait to share that. And you're going to hear from another listener who loves Evernote, but has a question on organizing her notebooks. But of course, before we dive into all of this good stuff, we are going to catch up on some of the genealogy news. And of course, the most recent news in my world has been all of our travels. Lacey and I have been on the road for the last 4 weeks. Let's see, it all started with Topeka, Kansas. We did a full-day seminar out there. Fabulous group of people. And then the next weekend, across the country, out to Bend, Oregon. So we did a full-day seminar out there. Then the next week, it was the Ohio Genealogical Society Conference. And that, we just had a couple of days turnaround, and that conference was really terrific. Such enthusiasm, fabulous audiences, people coming and being inquisitive and just really excited about what's new in genealogy and making some progress on their research. There were a lot of fantastic speakers. So we just had a wonderful time. And then it was a 2-day turnaround to get out to NGS, and that was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Like I say, that's not a bad place to have to attend a conference, right? So Lacey was with me. Diane Southard met up with us there. And once again, we held free sessions in our booth in the exhibit hall. That is one of my favorite things to do at these conferences. And for the second time, we live streamed many of those sessions through the free Periscope app, just like we did at RootsTech a couple of months ago. It is so cool how easy it is to use and how many of you were tuning in throughout the week. Now, we announced those Periscope sessions in the Genealogy Gems weekly newsletter. So if you're not already signed up to receive that newsletter, be sure and do that right away because it'll come out every Thursday, gives you all the latest tips and tools and things going on here at Genealogy Gems, including those live stream sessions. And if you didn't have a chance to tune in, you'll have another chance at the end of August 2016. We are heading to the Federation of Genealogical Societies Conference up in Springfield, Illinois. And we'll once again be offering some free presentations in our booth at the exhibit hall. And of course, some of those will be selected for live streaming on Periscope, no matter where you are. So all you have to do to participate from home is to download the free Periscope app. And you can do that on your mobile device from the App Store. Just type in Periscope. And you can also do this on your computer. So you can go to twitter.com. And even though Twitter may not be your favorite thing or something that you even have an account for, go ahead and sign up for a free account and then follow me at Lisa Cooke. So it's the at symbol, Lisa Cooke, Cooke, all together in one phrase. Type that in the search box and follow me, and you will see the Periscope sessions live streamed on my Twitter page, in my feed. They call it the feed, right? This is the ongoing, stuff that we are tweeting to the world. So Twitter is a way that you can do that on your computer. And you can also within 24 hours of the live session, you can go in and still watch the video right there from the Twitter feed, or of course, the Periscope app. So we will announce more about the FGS sessions as we get a little bit closer to that conference. Right now, I'm just taking a couple of weeks off. Well, it's not off. We're still podcasting. We're still doing all the other things that we're doing. But it was a wonderful, wonderful 4 weeks. But it's good to be home. I missed my puppies, Coda and Howie. I'm looking at them out the window. The sun is finally out here in Texas, so we are recovering from all of the rain, and the dogs are enjoying being outside. Let's see here. I'm digressing. At NGS, German genealogy expert, of course, James Beidler joined us, and, of course, our friend Lisa also gave a presentation on Eastern European research. I presented sessions on a variety of topics, like I was doing how to create a map overlay in Google Earth. That was my first time doing that as just kind of a quick demo session. It was about 20, 30 minutes in the booth. And that's a great follow-up, to watching something like Google Earth for genealogy, which is the free video on my website. That creating the overlays is a way to bring a digital image of a map into Google Earth that wasn't already there, that's not part of the layers panel. And then you can set it up to be an overlay that stays permanently in your Google Earth Places panel. It's really cool. And I also did sessions on Evernote for genealogy. Oh, and Diane Southard, your DNA guide, gave several terrific presentations on DNA. So we had something for everybody. And boy, did we have really big crowds at every session. It was really fun. It really makes, like I say, the exhibit hall so much fun. I think there were a lot of other vendors there, and some of them were doing sessions, but I have to say, all the gems were over at our booth. It was wonderful. So if you saw the first Periscope session that I did on Evernote, you'll see that I was actually sitting down during it. That doesn't happen much when you're speaking. But I threw my back out before we scheduled to leave for Florida. So, like I say, I'd been on a 4-week tour across the country speaking, and wouldn't you know it, it was just those 2 days that I was home between the Ohio Genealogical Society Conference and NGS. I thought, I'm just going to meander around the garden, kind of putz around and I pulled a couple of weeds, and bam, I threw my back out. I have a very old back injury, goes way back to when my first daughter was born, and I was lifting her out of the back of the car, out of the car seat. You moms all know what that was like. And every once in a while, if I just move in the wrong way, it just throws everything into a tizzy. So we kind of scrambled the night before. We were supposed to leave for NGS. Bill had to jump online. He booked a flight, joined us on the flight, and he came just to carry my bags and take care of me. He is so chivalrous. Isn't that amazing? I am so lucky. And thank goodness for Lacey, because she just took such good care of everybody who came to the booth and everything that was happening. So we did it. I did manage to present both of my NGS lectures. I was on my feet. They were very nice. They provided a chair just in case. But I get so pumped up and excited about talking about Google search strategies and Google Earth. Two of my favorite topics. So the adrenaline just starts flowing, and it took over. I didn't feel a thing when I was teaching the NGS classes until they were over, but that's okay. I stood up during the whole thing. So despite my mishaps before we left, everything went off without a hitch. And as always, I love getting to visit with so many of you. And again, be sure that you get our weekly newsletter, because even if you don't get an opportunity to come to a conference, you can join us virtually from your home doing the Periscope and the Twitter thing. So just go to genealogygems.com and you can sign up for our free newsletter on the homepage. Let's see here. Other news. My Heritage came out with something that was right before NGS, I believe. It was called book matching. And I love being able to search digitized books online. I do not miss the old days, though, when my only option for searching books was to head to a library, stand in the stacks for my ancestors' state or county, pull out every single book and thumb through the index and the table of contents, hoping to spot a familiar surname. That's how we would used to dig into the books, right? And then there was the really laborious part that followed, which was trying to skim through all these important looking books just in case my family wasn't included in the index, but maybe they were in there somewhere. Now, of course, there are still times we head to the library. That's the place to be. That's the only place where that book is. And thank goodness for libraries. But so many of the books that we want to search for, our ancestors, are available online and digitized. Google Books, of course, is one of my favorite. Over 25 million books available on Google Books. But the new one is this MyHeritage book matching. So according to myheritage.com, their new technology is, quote, automatically finds matches for people in your family tree on MyHeritage in our vast collection of 450,000 digitized historical books, unquote. So that's 91 million pages and counting, because they have 50 curators out there aiming to add hundreds of millions of pages of digitized books each year. So right now they have just English language books, but they're also working to expand on that. The MyHeritage book matching uses what they call full semantic text analysis. That's the fancy way of saying it can compare digital book content with the people in your family tree. So one of MyHeritage's staffers explained that this means that the search system is looking both at the names on your trees and the locations and looking for book content that captures both of those. And that leads to greater accuracy in search results. So let's say your McKay family in Iowa will get targeted attention rather than just rounding up results for all McKays or McKays in England or somewhere else. It really targets it, location and name. The nice thing about this technology is that it's automated. We love it when technology can do some of the work for us. And like the main record matching and newspaper matching features on MyHeritage, the site constantly combs new content. So it's looking for matches for your tree and alerts you when possibilities are found. It's kind of like Google Alerts, right? For books that are digitized by MyHeritage. Now, if you don't know about Google Alerts, it's the automated Google searching feature that you can set up for your genealogy. Go to the show notes for this episode, 191. There's a link that will take you to learn more about Google Alerts. It's a must for every genealogist. My tree on MyHeritage has gotten a few book matching hits. I asked contributing editor Sunny Morton about her tree. She's had 6 matches so far, all of which appear really relevant. And she told me that her favorite is one that mentions an ancestor and all her siblings as charter members of the Mount Vernon Cumberland Presbyterian Church in Missouri. She found a picture of another ancestor in a church biographical collection, also a family history book that she didn't have, and another ancestor's name in a state genealogical magazine. So, hey, the possibilities are definitely out there. So the question is, do you have to have a paid subscription to MyHeritage to use this book matching? Yes and no. Book matches are generated automatically for any family tree built on the website or imported into it. But a data subscription, which runs about $10 a month, is required to actually view your book matches. So you can learn more about that in the show notes for this episode. How do you get to the show notes? If you're new, and I know a lot of you are new listeners, go to genealogygems.com, and under podcast, you're going to the Genealogy Gems podcast, and you click on episode 191. That takes you to a webpage dedicated just to this episode. All the details are there. We try to do as much transcription as we can of the episode, and certainly we include all links that we talk about. So to learn more about using MyHeritage and the new book matching feature, head to the show notes, episode 191. Now, there are some Canadian conferences coming up, and I know we have lots of Canadian listeners out there, and of course, many of you who have Canadian ancestry. The first weekend in June, I'm headed north to the Ontario Genealogical Society Conference in Toronto, and I'm excited to keynote this event, which has the theme On the Cutting Edge. That is my kind of topic for genealogy. I'll be talking about strategies for what I think is the future in technology and genealogy and ways to kind of make that easier and more exciting to use than ever. I'm also going to be teaching sessions on Google search methodology and creating your own YouTube channel. The conference will be held June 3rd through the 5th, and it's going to be at the International Plaza Hotel in Toronto. And while we're on the subject of genealogy conferences in Ontario, I just wanted to alert you to a news item that I heard about recently for the Great Canadian Genealogy Summit. So it's CanGen, and it's going to be held October 21st through the 23rd of 2016 at the Courtyard by Marriott in Brampton, Ontario. The conference is going to include time at the Ontario Archives and an on-site workshop to help those who want to document their United Empire Loyalist ancestors. And for those wondering, the Loyalists were British subjects who were living in the U.S. colonies at the time of the Revolutionary War, and they fled to Canada because they stayed loyal to the Crown. So check out the show notes for more information about this new event, CanGen, and of course also for the Ontario Genealogical Society Conference, where I will hopefully see you there. And in this final news item, I've got new German records online. This broke while I was at the Ohio Genealogical Society Conference, and lucky me, I had Jim Beidler, the German genealogy expert, sitting next to me, and we got to spend some time together. So I dragged him off to an empty conference room, and I said, Jim, tell me, let's talk about these new German records. So here's my conversation with Jim Beidler.
Well, I'm here at the Ohio Genealogical Society Conference with the German Genealogy Answer Man. That is your official title now, is it not, James Beidler?
Well, so my poster board says.
Well, then it's official. And actually, we all know James by Jim. One of the things that we do every week, every Friday, on our Genealogy Gems blog is we talk about new records. And Sonny Morton, of course, came flying over to me this morning and saying, oh my gosh, I see all kinds of new German records coming online at Ancestry. And I got to grab Jim because I got to know, are these really, significant? Is there something new here? We see them talking millions of records, and it's kind of exciting to know that maybe there are new records available for German genealogy. So what do you think? I know she kind of gave you a quick glance at some of the new ones they just announced.
Yes, well, there in general, there's a real arms race going on between Ancestry, Family Search, MyHeritage in trying to acquire rights to various German records. All those three groups are quite aggressive. And Ancestry, both soloing in partnerships that it's developing with German archives, and then also in partnerships through Family Search, is acquiring lots more German records.
And that's all good news for us. And they partner because it not only can be financially an investment, but from what I understand from the acquisitions people, it can be a long time in the making. They don't just walk in and sign an agreement and it's, access.
Yeah, the agreements are very complicated, and especially as we move on in the digital age, places are kind of planning ahead toward, what's the next technology going to be, and are we committing ourselves also not just for today's digital technology, but also for the future. So as a result, many of the archives are somewhat wary, and the wariness ends up being manifesting as itself in a long review process. So there's quite a long tail from when they start negotiations to when things actually go live.
What are some of the types of records, these newest ones coming out in Ancestry? Or are we talking church records or something else? There's
a lot of church records from various regions of Germany, from Württemberg, from Baden, some from the old eastern areas. And the interesting thing, and this has kind of become a complete lecture for me, is trying to tell which ones are the original registers that have been digitized, and other times there are the good German compound word is Kirchenbuchduplicata, church book duplicates, or KBDs for short. And what these are, usually they were made close to the same time as the originals. They were made as kind of a substitute for there not being civil registration at that point. And now a lot of times these are virtually identical, and they are good sources if those originals are not available for whatever reason. And so, but you got to know what you're looking at. You got to know what you're looking at.
Right. So when we see these records coming out, I know they do tell us kind of what the collection is, where it comes from. Should we be looking at that, and do we need to keep anything in particular in mind? What is it? If you're looking at a duplicate, if you will, should we really invest some time to try to track down? Is there the original?
Oh, if it's the actual KBDs that I just mentioned, very likely you don't have to go to the trouble of the original. But things that are marked transcripts or abstracts or extracts, those classes, or what I call iterations of the records, often are really essentially secondary sources, and therefore, you should use them as a gateway to then try to determine if the original is extant, and if so, how you can access it. A fair number of times, the original may not any longer be extant, but it's worth at least trying to find that out.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to have links in the show notes to a good deal of the most recent collections that have become available. And, of course, tell everybody, we talked about in our newsletter that you have a new book out, and tell us about it. You've been awfully busy here at the conference.
Well, yes, Trace Your German Roots Online debuted in early April. And quite proud of it. It bills itself as being a complete guide to German genealogy websites, and there's an awful lot of websites in there. There's a full chapter on ancestry, a full chapter on family search, as well as chapters that are oriented toward what are the most logical questions that genealogists with German ancestry ask, and how web tools can answer them. And
that's the key, because the book cover looks a little bit similar to a previous book that you did on German research, but this one is focused on online. And like you said, it's like an arms race. It's growing dramatically. And so you're not just listing websites. If you're writing entire chapters, what are you giving us as the readers? Is it kind of here's what to look for, here's how to do a search? What kinds of things will we get?
Well, one thing is there are a good number of step-by-steps for accessing websites, because different websites have different ways of searching the records. In some cases, you can't search the records. You have to browse through images that are not indexed, and we indicate that about the various websites. And then in the case of the big sites like Ancestry, MyHeritage, Family Search, and a new one called archeon.de, that's a Protestant church record site. For all of them, we also have a forecasting section where we looked at where are these sites going in the near future.
Fantastic. Well, you can learn more about it. Head to the show notes. We'll have a link to Jim's new book, and I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic resource because there is so much coming online, and you will see. Now, we're recording this in 2016. If you're looking at the show notes in 2016, you will see a coupon code that will get you 15% off the book, which is fantastic. So take advantage of that. And if you are listening to this later into the future, hello, all of you future people. We are going to attempt to get that coupon code renewed. So it's worth going to the show notes and take a look and see what the coupon code is there for this podcast episode. And you can get a little discount and a lot of German records. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome, Lisa.
You got to love it. New German genealogy records. Thanks so much to Jim Beidler for chatting with me about that. And coming up next, I'm going to chat with you about your family history research. And that's coming up next.
letter from my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I'll bet he's glad. But more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
Recently, I exchanged emails with Tom, and he wrote first in to say, I'm writing to share with you a total and entirely unexpected success in using Google tools for my research. By way of introduction, I am a young genealogist, aged 21, from Massachusetts. My interest in family history began at an early age, but has grown immensely over the past couple of years. I recently discovered your podcast and have been working through the archived episodes on my daily 1.5-hour commute. I watched your Google Earth presentation last weekend, and I had some time to try your tips out after work today. Well, Tom went on to describe his Google research in Bristol County, Massachusetts. He found a 1943 UGSG map to overlay on Google Earth. Remember, I was talking about that overlay session I did at NGS? This is the same idea. That's the same technique I just described in my Google Earth lecture that I streamed from NGS, where you layer an old map on top of Google Earth's modern map so that you can line up the old street names and the locations with what's there now. And it's a great way to match up the geography of the past with the present, kind of a time travel thing. You can find out more about how to do that. I have my step-by-step how-to instructions in my Google Earth video series. There's a digital download tutorial series available in the store. And also, of course, there's 5 chapters on Google Earth in the Genealogist Google Toolbox, the 2nd edition, my newest book. And those are both on the website store. So back to Tom's story. The 1943 map that he found isn't very old, but it showed Tom something really neat. He zoomed in on the area where 2 sets of 2 times great-grandparents lived. One of those grandparents had the surname Todd, okay? And on the USGS map, he noticed a small body of water, and it was marked Todd's Pond. So Tom wrote, I just knew this couldn't be a coincidence, so I went straight to Google again. He searched Todd's Pond, North Attleboro, and got a Google Books search result from a history of North Attleboro that he calls, quote, astonishing. The search result picked up a caption to an old photo of showing men harvesting ice the old-fashioned way from a pond. The caption says, In the days before electric refrigeration, North Attleboro's homes and stores relied upon ice harvested from either Whiting's Pond or Todd's Pond, depicted here. By the time this 1906 photograph was taken, farmers George, Henry, James, and William Todd found selling ice more profitable than farming and founded the Oldham Ice Company. Todd's Pond was located on the westerly side of Old Post Road near the corner of Allen Avenue. The Old Town Church is visible in the background, unquote. So those Todd men are Tom's second great-uncles, and the photo apparently shows them working the family business. Tom wrote, and I quote, "What a spectacular find. I plan to reach out to the local museum that prepared the book to see if they can provide a better copy, and even additional media should I be so fortunate." In short, he says, I want to take a moment to say thank you so very much, big exclamation point. Had I not been exploring Google Earth at your suggestion, I'm not sure if I would have ever noticed Todd's Pond. Thanks for all of the genuinely helpful information that you work so hard to compile and present, unquote. Well, you are so welcome, Tom. I love hearing these success stories. And this is certainly the type of email that I like to see land in my inbox. It is such a shining example of putting into action my Google for Genealogy methodology. I love the way that Tom used Google Earth and then followed up with the Google search. And it led him into Google Books, and there were the gems. Curious about something that Tom said about himself, so I wrote him back with this question. I said, at 21, you are well on your way to being an incredible genealogist. I'm curious, when did you begin and what prompted you? So he wrote back his answer. I thought I'd share it with you. He says, I actually remember very specifically what prompted my interest in genealogy. I have an aunt in Maine who had collected an assortment of family history documents, mostly scribblings of names and dates, various notes, rudimentary charts. I visited her when I was about 12 years old, and she passed the torch to me. In addition to the documents, she gave me a genealogy software program. I have to admit that I was more excited to play with the software than actually learn anything about my family, but my interest did evolve with time. I've never really reflected on it until now, but it's amazing how that small gesture had such a lasting impact. Genealogy has become incredibly important in my life. It has given me the avenue to connect with family members on a personal and emotional level that I could never have imagined. My paternal grandmother was raised in foster care and never knew who her father was. This past year, I invested in an autosomal DNA test, and I was actually able to find him through a cousin match. He died in the 80s, but I was able to obtain photographs from another cousin, and Grandma was actually able to see her father, Louis Simon Heemstra, for the first time. This was not only a truly life-changing experience for her, but for me as well. It reaffirmed how valuable genealogy and family history are. Wow. Tom, that is fantastic. You sound amazing. I think you're going to be the next big genealogy star out there because isn't Tom so articulate? He really, I'm just blown away. Thank you, Tom, so much for writing in. You really inspired me, and I'm hoping in sharing this that, well, I know you'll be inspiring others who are listening. I've got another email here. This one came in recently from Donna. She has an iMac. She says that she has been, quote, happily using Evernote for a while now, so I already have lots of notes, notebooks, and stacks. I watched your webinar this morning. Very helpful. I've been using the web clipper a bit this morning. It's great. I made my genealogy and personal notebooks, added tags you suggested, and discovered Evernote Clearly is no longer available. And of course, that's because Evernote Clearly is actually been kind of integrated into the web clipper itself. It has come in at different amounts or time frames with the different web browsers. But basically, Evernote Clearly was sweeping away kind of the noise, the extras around an article on a website and just gives you the nice plain text of the article versus copying over all of the imagery and the advertisements and that kind of thing. So that's what Donna's talking about with Evernote Clearly. So don't worry. It's typically built into the web clipper. So Donna is saying now she's got all this stuff and wants to know what's the best way to start putting them into these new notebooks. So she's got one for genealogy and one called personal. And what I recommend, of course, is that, and this we cover in depth in the premium videos that we have on Evernote. Gosh, there's, I think, 7 of them now, 7 one-hour classes, all different types of topics. But what we're talking about is notebooks are kind of just for the big picture, okay? It's tagging that's really the key to organizing in Evernote. And so if you're using Evernote for your genealogy notes, I was suggesting start with just a genealogy notebook and a personal notebook so that, in a sense, you're separating the genealogy stuff out of the rest of your life, right? So that you can just click the genealogy notebook and know that you are only now working within your genealogy notes. It's not all your recipes and your other stuff that you're keeping track of in Evernote. I know I keep track of a lot of different stuff in my life in Evernote. So she's saying that she's kind of had all these notes already, and she's trying to figure out how to get them in there. She's kind of feeling like she's lost track of some of the notes, but of course that's just that they all go in one pot, basically, right? And we're kind of trying to divide them into 2 pots, genealogy and personal. So she asked if there was another video on kind of my recommendations on the best way to go about that. She says, thanks for being there for us, Lisa. All our stuff can become overwhelming if it can't be organized. Well, Donna, I'm very, very glad that you found the Evernote videos helpful. And like I said, if you're wondering about the Evernote video series, Genealogy Gems Premium members, when you subscribe to the website, you have access to, over, I think, a total of 30 video tutorials that we have created already. And there's the entire series on Evernote. So you can learn more about that. Go to genealogygems.com and click on Premium, and you will be able to get information about subscribing from there. And it includes the entire Premium podcast. So if you enjoy the audio show that you're listening to now, you'll definitely get, there's over 130 episodes now. So that's all there archived for Premium members. Anyway, here's a response to Donna and anyone else with this question. First, good for you for getting organized, okay? That's awesome. And the thing about organizing is that sometimes it can really gobble up all of your research time. Have you noticed this? So one approach that I often recommend is just to move notes as you use them. As they're coming up and you're pulling them up through the search box and through the tags, you could go ahead and just drag and drop them onto the appropriate notebook, genealogy or personal. That way you can keep researching, okay? Your whole life doesn't have to come to a standstill because you're trying to get a little bit reorganized. So you could devote a little bit of time each day. Maybe you could just move them while you're listening to the podcast, right? And then also as you're going, just tidying up as you go. Eventually everything's going to end up between those two notebooks. I gave Donna some step-by-step instructions for getting everything moved and organized, if you want to do it that way, into Evernote notebooks. And you can see the show notes for those tips. The thing about getting organized is that sometimes it can just gobble up all your research time, right? So one approach I often recommend is just to move Evernote notes as you use them. That way you can keep researching while getting more organized each day. And as you create new notes, of course, you're going to put those directly where they belong. And as you use existing notes, you can kind of tidy those up as you go. Now, if you feel more comfortable getting everything moved in one fell swoop, that's fine too. And one way to save time is with this simple trick. Decide what you have more of. Let's say you have more genealogy notes than you have personal, okay? And those are our two notebooks. Move all of your notes into that notebook, the one that you have more of. So let's move everything into genealogy. And you can click and drag them. So an easy way to do that is just to click on Notes, which is kind of like your root directory in Evernote. It's just called Notes. Click on that, you'll see all of your notes in the center column. So you would click on the first note, scroll all the way to the bottom, holding the Shift key, and click the last note, and you've got all of them. Click and drag those into genealogy. Okay? Then, now you only have less than half of your notes that need to be moved, right? So you can move the rest of the notes from the genealogy notebook into the other notebooks, such as personal, or if you have a couple of different notebooks that you want to move them into. So here's a step-by-step on how to do that. So you're going to click the genealogy notebook where you've moved all of your notes, and then you're going to see all of the notes in the center column. That's the search box, kind of the search results column. Click on the first note that you want to move. Okay, and then you can kind of cherry pick through the list by holding down your Control key on your keyboard and clicking each additional note in the list that you want to move so that they don't have to be in exact order, right? You can pick through the list and you can use the wheel on your mouse. If you have a wheel on your mouse, you can scroll down as you need to, and your notes will be collecting in that right-hand window pane, and a dialog box will appear. You'll see it there. In that dialog box, you're going to click Move to Notebook, that button, and click to select the desired notebook. And in this case, that might be the personal notebook because we're moving those from genealogy over to personal. And of course, for good measure, when you're done, click the sync button to manually synchronize all of your notes so that if you are working on your computer doing this and you hop over onto your mobile app, you'll see them all reorganized just the way you want them. So after giving Donna those step-by-step instructions for getting everything moved and organized in Evernote notebooks, she replied with this note. She said, "Within a matter of minutes, I was able to move my notes and notebooks into the two stacks. Now that personal and genealogy are separated, I'll follow your suggestion to tidy up the notes as I go and add all my tags," which I hadn't realized the importance of before the video. It feels so good to have it clearly organized. You rock, Lisa. Thank you, Donna. Glad to be rocking your Evernote notes. And I'm glad that the Genealogy Gems premium videos, the entire series on Evernote, has proved helpful to you. It really does go step by step, and I'm really glad that you are on your way to note-taking success.
Bring me a letter from my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I bet he's glad, but more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
I'm a firm believer in taking responsibility for the life and future of my genealogy data. So instead of just uploading my information only onto someone else's genealogy website, I enter it into my master database on my computer into the premier genealogy software program. It's RootsMagic at rootsmagic.com. Genealogy software is RootsMagic's primary focus. It's not just a sideline. And I continue to be really impressed by their free online training videos and all the rich features they add. And here's the latest. Not only can you import a GEDCOM file from another program, but now with the release of RootsMagic 7.1, you can directly import any Family Tree Maker file with everything attached. That's everything attached. In fact, RootsMagic can import a bigger variety of older Family Tree Maker files than any single version of Family Tree Maker itself. It's just one more way that RootsMagic has been reaching out to the genealogy community and helping them care for their most precious data, their family tree. And there's even more to look forward to this year because RootsMagic has announced an agreement with Ancestry, and later this year they're going to be able to synchronize your family tree with Ancestry the same way that Family Tree Maker did. There's never been a better time to try or switch to RootsMagic. Head to rootsmagic.com and download the free RootsMagic Essentials today. You're going to love it. That's rootsmagic.com.
Hello, it's Sunny Morton, Genealogy Gems Book Club Guru, here to shine the spotlight on The Summer Before the War by Helen Simonson. This novel takes place in a small English town just before and then right into the events of World War I. The heroine, Beatrice Nash, is trying to find her footing as an independent, educated woman. She's got a romance on the horizon, and she's getting to know some fantastic characters, gypsies and gentry, when bam, here comes World War I. First as rumors and dinner conversation, then as a trickle of refugees into town, and finally as a horrible pull on their local young men into combat. Lisa always asks me when we're talking about possible titles for the book club, what does this book mean to us as genealogists? For me, The Summer Before the War does a couple of things. First, I think it can be difficult to imagine our ancestors in living color with a full range of human emotions. When we can find photos of them, they're black and white or brown and white. When we find them in print, they're often more reserved in what they say than we like. Times were stricter then, and we may make assumptions about their passions and how they lived them out. What a novel like The Summer Before the War does for me is remind me that people at that time had just as many feelings as I do. They lived and breathed and loved and hurt and were tempted and frightened and everything else. Yes, a novel is not a historically accurate recreation of my ancestors' character, or anyone else's ancestors' characters, for that matter. But it places the human spirit in a certain time and place, perhaps a time and place that was also inhabited by my relatives. It helps me to imagine their lives from a fuller, richer perspective. The other thing I love about this book is that it reminds me that history didn't happen in these neat little intervals like we put them on our timelines. Sometimes when I start to timeline out an ancestor's life, I separate certain events. During these years they went to school, or got married and started a family, or worked as a teacher. But then you dump a war on top of that timeline. You realize that for some people, the war snuck in the back door of their lives and stayed there while they were trying to get married and start a family, or work as a teacher, or all of the above. Of course, for those who went to the front, or to whom the fight came, the story is more dramatic, but even then, the war happened to them within the context of other things that were already happening. The Summer Before the War is really good at showing how the conflict just gradually dawned on this English village before becoming an everyday and grim reality for many of its residents, and the final chapter for a few of them. The book is The Summer Before the War by Helen Simonson. Remember, Helen joins us for a fantastic conversation about the book in next month's Genealogy Gems Premium podcast. And of course, Lisa will put an excerpt from the interview into this free podcast too. So use the link in the show notes to grab your copy of The Summer Before the War and enjoy it. It's a fun, easy read, but with plenty of meat on its bones for those who love history and who love reimagining the lives of their ancestors.
Hello again from Roots Tech. Joining me is somebody I have been looking forward to having a conversation with for a long time. We see each other on Facebook and all these places, and she makes the rounds in her speaking. It's Amy Johnson Crow, and I've got her here. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Lisa.
How nice to have you here.
Finally sit down and talk.
I know. I think it's more challenging when you're both speakers because we're both living out of suitcases and running here and there. You were talking, one of your classes was on apps and mobile technology, and my radar is all about that because of my new book, Mobile Genealogy, But I loved the assortment that you covered in your class. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my class was Best Websites and Apps for Finding Local History.
Local history. That was the thing that intrigued me.
Yeah, because in our genealogy, we focus so much on the people. And when we go searching, we search for names, right? We want to find who are the parents, who are all the children. We want to find the people. But I really believe that if we have any hope of understanding the ancestors, we have to understand where they lived.
Yeah.
It just makes such a difference in how they lived their lives and what was impacting their lives based on where they lived. So I was taking a look at some of the best websites and apps. And surprisingly, a couple of the websites that I highlighted, one of them being something called History Pin, which I love History Pin, and another site called What Was There. You can use them on mobile. They've actually gotten away from having a standalone app.
Really?
Because they've taken their website and they're devoting more of their development time to making their website mobile responsive. So it's still very... you can still definitely use it on your mobile devices, but you don't have to download a standalone app for it.
So you'd be using it, but through your browser
Through your
app.
browser.
Okay,
exactly.
great.
So you don't have something additional that you have to download in these two cases. History Pin started in England, so you're actually going to find a lot of cool local history in England, Ireland, Scotland. It's
very cool because we have a lot of listeners and viewers from the UK.
Yeah, and it's really... It's good for England. It's also wonderful for the United States. What I like about History Pin is that different individuals and a lot of organizations like museums, archives, libraries have added photos and put them into collections.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, kind of like you would think if you're familiar with Pinterest, having a Pinterest board. So you could have a collection based on a certain location or a certain theme. Maybe you have a postcard collection of public libraries. You could make a collection based on those postcards. It doesn't have to be from one individual town. It'd be the theme of public libraries or something like that.
So when people use History Pin, are they going in and searching for these and kind of picking which collections they follow? How does that work? Because I know from the origins of it, they were out of the gate with a lot of imagery, so that could get really overwhelming.
Yeah, it really can be overwhelming. So what I suggest on any of these sites or these apps is to start with the location that you're interested in. Don't search for your ancestor's name. Instead, search where your ancestor was living.
Right.
And then you'll see the collections that are tied to that location, and you'll see the individual pins that have been placed. And with History Pin, it isn't just photos, although that is the majority of what they have. But in my talk, I also highlighted a collection of oral histories from Northwest Ohio. And they've actually uploaded the videos of these veterans that they have interviewed for these oral histories. So you see videos along with the photos. It's just really cool what History Pin has done.
Really expanding to different types of media. And the other one was What Was There?
Whatwasthere.com. Again, you can use it on your mobile device, but still think about the location that you want to look for. You can go in. They don't have the collection feature that they have on History Pin, but What Was There is very integrated in with Google Street View.
Oh, we love that.
So if you have a photograph and you know exactly where it was taken, you know that was at Grandma's house, or you know that was Grandpa's service station or his grocery store, whatever it is, and you know the address. If Google Street View has captured that address, you can actually do an overlay of that historic photo with Google Street View and do a fade between the modern image and that historic photo. It is so much fun.
And I know I teach that with using Google Earth, and you can kind of create your own overlays. But I've seen What Was There, and it's really neat. And it's kind of a neat introduction to getting involved in this whole idea of geographic overlays. And like you said, it's the closest to time travel I can find so far.
Yeah, it is. And it's so much fun. I mean, it's a really good way, I think, of bringing kids in, because there is that wow factor.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, that was Grandpa's grocery store, and now it's a McDonald's. You know, I have that in my own family with my dad's service station. It's like, okay, it's sad to see that it's not there, but to see what was there, hence What Was There.
Well, fabulous. Well, two great websites. Before we wrap, how about an app? You have a favorite app that you talked about in that class?
I had several favorite apps, but I'm going to give you one that might surprise you. You probably already have it on your phone, Instagram.
Okay.
We think about Instagram for posting photos of food and our cats, but instead of thinking about photos that you want to share with others, follow libraries and archives and museums, because they post a lot of historic photos from their collections.
Oh,
so if you have ancestors in a specific county or a specific town, follow that public library, follow that historical society, that museum, because they're going to be posting historic photos from that area.
And see, isn't that neat? Because a lot of people have shied away from Instagram because they're like, well, the kids are on it. I don't want to get into that. Start with that. That's going to feed your need. It gives you a little bit of a burning need to learn it and get involved in it. But then I think turn it around and start. How about, can we Instagram pictures of our ancestors and try to, my daughter was explaining it as it's just got to be shareable. We're not interested, the young people if it's not shareable. And I think being out there where they are is really critical to foster the interest.
Exactly. And that's what I like about Instagram, because now they have the feature on Instagram where you can send a photo to someone else that you follow on Instagram. So if you are following, say, an archive, and there's a really cool photo of the old neighborhood, and you're friends with your daughter on Instagram, you could send that photo right to her, and she would have that picture.
I love it. Yeah. And all of them free?
All of them free.
Wonderful. Any others that we just can't miss?
There's a website that's fun. They do also have a standalone app called Clio, C-L-I-O. It isn't quite as integrated with the Google Street View. You're not going to be able to do the historic fade, but the resources that they give, they have their descriptions tend to be more robust. They also have additional sources that you can follow up if this is something that really interests you. You've got a whole bibliography that you can follow along with the photos. And you can also, on the Clio app, when you have it on your phone and you've turned your location services on, you can turn on the app and it will tell you the historic sites that are around you.
Fantastic.
So imagine doing that, going on a walk, going and exploring with the kids or the grandkids, and over there used to be such and so.
Right.
Yeah,
bringing the past into the present.
Yeah, it's fun.
Very cool. I knew we needed to get you on the show, and I love talking apps. If you want to learn more about these, the links to the different apps and programs that she's been talking about. Also a link to Amy's blog, which is wonderful. And how about my mobile genealogy book? Just put it all together, make the most out of that tablet or that smartphone that you invest in, because it can do so much for your family history. Thank you so much for joining me, Amy.
Thanks for having me.
Speaking of apps, if you use the Genealogy Gems app, there's bonus material for you for this episode. We include bonus material often with our episodes just in the app. And in case this is news to you that we have a Genealogy Gems app, it's the easiest way to listen to this podcast. You can do it on your mobile device while you're doing other things, which I know a lot of you have written in and told me you're out there gardening and swimming and biking and doing all kinds of things. As you've just heard, the app includes, again, this bonus content that you're not going to find anywhere else. So head to the show notes for this episode 191. We have links to the Genealogy Gems app for iPhone, iPad, Android, or Windows. You can also find it on the website, genealogygems.com, and hover your mouse over podcast and click on the Genealogy Gems app, and you'll find those same links all there.
Change is afoot at Ancestry DNA again. Hi, I'm Diane Southard, your DNA guide, and I'm here to tell you about this change at Ancestry DNA. While stability and predictability seem like honorable qualities in a company or product, when it comes to tech tools in the ears of tech companies, those words sound more like dated and old. Of course, we're used to this by now. I had a client tell me recently that he wanted to be in touch sooner, but his grandson upgraded his computer to Windows 10 and then promptly left for college the next day, leaving him fighting with a new interface and operating system. The good news is, you won't have this problem with Ancestry DNA's new update. There aren't any changes to the interface or the layout of the information. In fact, many of you will not even notice at first that your match list has changed. But in fact, there likely have been some adjustments made, including some of your third cousins may have been demoted to fourth cousins. Some of your fourth cousins have been demoted to fifth to eighth cousins. Some of your distant cousins have disappeared off your match list. And you have new cousins on your distant match list. In general, from what Ancestry has showed us, you gain more than you lose. Changes in the dregs of your match list may not seem like that big of a deal, so why am I telling you about it? Probably because I'm a nerd, and I like cool science stuff, so I think you should too. You see, Ancestry has made some big changes in the way that they're calculating matches. They're getting better at it, which means that your match list is now more representative of your ancestral connections, even at the very distant level. There are two big pieces to this matching puzzle that Ancestry has tinkered with in this latest update: phasing and matching. You'll remember our discussion on DNA phasing, or you can look it up on the blog, and how phasing can impact your matching. Ancestry has developed a robust reference database of phased DNA in order to better phase our samples. Basically, they've looked through their database at parent-child duos and trios and noted that certain strings of DNA values often travel together. It's like they've noticed that our DNA says a black cat scared the mouse instead of the brown cat ate the mouse. And they can then recognize that phrase in our DNA, which in turn helps our DNA tell the true story of our heritage. In addition to updating the phasing, Ancestry has revamped their matching method. In the past, they viewed our DNA in small windows of information and then stitched those windows together to try to get a better picture of what our DNA looked like. Now, instead, they've turned to a point-by-point analysis of our DNA. Again, to use a sentence example, with the window analysis, we may have the following sentence windows. I'll read it here for you, but it's probably easier to understand in print, so be sure to check out the blog. Okay, so the windows are ac NJ, ill went T, he hill T, etch a pay, o of water. Of those windows, you may share the etch a pay with another individual in the database, earning that cousin a spot on your match page. However, the truth is that that little bit could say sketch a painting, or stretch a painful leg, or fetch a pail. With Ancestry's new method, they're able to see farther on either side of the matching segment, making this clearly fetch a pail instead of any of the other options. That means better matching, which means more confidence in your cousin matches. The downside to this update is going to come in the reorganization of some of your relationships. Ancestry has tightened their genetic definition of your third and fourth cousins. Basically, that means that some of your true third cousins are going to show up as fourth cousins, and some of your true fourth cousins are going to be shifted down to the abyss of fifth to eighth cousins. What is really upsetting about this is that what it does to the shared matches tool. The shared matches tool allows you to gather matches in the database that are related to you and to one other person, provided you are all related at the fourth cousin level or higher. This tightening of the belt on fourth cousins means that some of them are going to drop through the cracks of that tool, really limiting its ability. Hopefully, Ancestry will fix that and expand this tool to include all of your matches. They have their fairly good reasons for not expanding it, but still. So, as the winds of change blow yet another iteration of the Ancestry DNA match page, I think we can see this as an overall win for doing genealogy with our genetics at Ancestry DNA. At least, that's my opinion. What do you think? I would love to hear from you. Just email me at guide@yourdnaguide.com.
Profile America, Thursday, May 26th. The first public high school in the U.S. was founded this month in 1820. The English Classical School opened in 1821 with 101 male students in Boston, which was also the seat for America's first high school of any kind, the Boston Latin Grammar School. Boston Latin, beginning in 1635, sought to prepare young men for admittance to Harvard as divinity students. English Classical placed its emphasis on more general studies. High schools were slow to spread, and by 1870, there were still only 500 public high schools with 50,000 students in the U.S. Today, there are some 24,000 public high schools across the country. Current enrollment in both public and private high schools stands at 16.6 million, with males slightly outnumbering females. Profile America is beginning its 20th year as a public service of the U.S. Census Bureau.
You know, that piece of history about high schools really helps me as a genealogist. I love looking for relatives in high school yearbooks. Love the pictures especially. Knowing that my relatives may not have attended high school before a certain time period helps me also prioritize how energetically to search for their high school records or even where they would have attended. History and genealogy really are sister pursuits. So learning about history, the history of a locale, an institution, a record type, really does inform the genealogy research process and how we understand our ancestors' stories. I hope you caught the history learning tips in this podcast episode. The local history apps Amy Crow talked about, Tom's Google Book Find in that history book. So many great modern tools for learning about the past. I guess that's what the Genealogy Gems podcast itself is, a modern tool to help you in your ongoing search for your ancestors. Happy hunting, and until next time, thanks so much for listening, friend. I'll talk to you soon.